What's going on, YouTube? So the CX-90 has been at the top of the Mazda lineup for a few years now, but since its introduction, it's seen some pretty significant updates.
And those changes continue into 2026 with way more standard features to this family 3-row.
So with these updates, is the CX-90 an even better pick than ever? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Like always, let's kick things off under the hood. So you can get the CX-90 in 3 different flavors. We have the standard option today, which is a 3.3-liter turbocharged inline 6-cylinder with a mild hybrid system, making 280 horsepower. That's paired to an 8-speed automatic transmission, and with the standard all-wheel drive system, combined fuel economy is 25 mpg.
Now, the base price of the CX-90 this year is $38,000, and if you're looking to buy one or any new vehicle, we would encourage you to go to carconfections.com/newcarquotes to get the best price. Now, of course, we can't wait to take this out for a spin to show you the driving dynamics, things like our sound level reading, and at the end, we'll discuss resale and reliability.
But let's go ahead and close up the hood because we need to get into some of those 2026 updates. Now for 2026, one of the big things that Mazda did was effectively move a lot of the equipment that was on higher end trim levels down to lower trim levels this year, helping you get better value, particularly with the preferred trim, which is just the second trim up. You're gonna see a lot more stuff as you watch through this video for 2026. Now, in terms of the design, of course, this is a relatively new product, so it's got the freshest Mazda design, including their signature grille up here in the front. The sport trim levels are going to get the smoked chrome that goes around the outside edges, which I think looks very nice. And then let's talk about the lighting. So all of the CX-90s will come with premium LED headlights this year. Also, if you get a higher end example, including for the first time the Premium Plus trim with the standard engine, you get adaptive LED headlights, and you still have that dynamic turn signal indicator located over there in the grille. And as we move around to the back, it continues to have a pretty athletic look for a 3-row.
Absolutely, I really like the way this vehicle looks. As far as individual design touches, we have a spoiler up at the top, a rear wiper through the center section, and we do have some new elements for 2026. Those new elements would be the blacked out badging. So you'll notice that we have the darkened Mazda badging back through here, as well as our CX-90 on the sides. It's also on the wheels. However, oddly enough, the front badge is still silver, so I wish they had maybe updated that as well. Now, let's take a look at our taillights. So our taillights are going to be very premium as expected for the Mazda brand. We have an LED brake light, LED reverse light, and LED fading amber turn signal indicator. As we drop down to the lower fascia, we have mostly body color, and this vehicle can tow 5,000 pounds.
Moving on to the wheels, this is one of the areas where Mazda has moved down the 21-inch alloys. Now you get 21-inch alloys on every single trim except the base model, which has a 19-inch alloy instead. That's very impressive for the segment. As you can see on today's Premium Sport, we've got the gloss black finish. Still a little bit of cladding around the wheel arches on this trim level, as well as the lower part of the body. Dark chrome accenting up here with our inline 6 branding. And as far as the mirrors are concerned, you have standard heating and blind spot monitoring on all models. This Premium Sport is where you add in the auto dimming and power folding abilities.
Now, at the side of the CX-90, this vehicle is actually really big for the segment. It's 201.6 inches in length, which really makes it one of the largest options you can get. And you have that really pretty rear drive proportion. Now, we have blacked out window surrounds. We also have a blacked out roof rail up at the top. And when it comes to safety, Mazda doesn't mess around. You get all of your active safety features as standard equipment. Additionally, as you move up the trim structures, you'll get things like rear auto braking. But guys, there's a ton more standard features on the inside for 2026. But first, if you're new here, we're brothers and we've been reviewing cars since we were 12
and 16. We started young, and since then we've reviewed over 2,000 cars at every price point.
And if you want to know about all the latest and greatest rides, then make sure to subscribe to be a part of our Car Confections family.
Let's learn a lot and have some fun with all the newest cars. All right, now let's check out the interior. First, here's our Mazda key fob. It's their typical design with all the buttons over there on the side. Smart entry is standard equipment. Getting inside, just grab behind the handle. That will unlock the door and fold out the mirrors. And then let's check out the cabin of this model. So just like with the exterior, we have the latest Mazda design. And as you can see, it has a very premium look as well. Let's talk about the seats first of all. So what you're looking at is either a standard leatherette on just the base trim, and then you have a real leather through all the center trims, which includes today's premium sport model. Also, you can get Napa leather if you choose one of the very top end examples, and that has some special color options on the very top trim, including a very bougie looking tan. Now, these seats themselves feel nice and premium, especially with the contrast stitching. The adjustments will always be 8-way power with 2-way lumbar across the entire lineup. And new for 2026, that preferred trim level will also gain the memory seats, so only the base option will not have memory seats this year. Let's go ahead and climb inside. Now, Mazda always advertises this vehicle as something of a luxury alternative, and it is available at a wide variety of price points. Let's check the materials for today's example. So over here on the door trim, we have a nicely padded armrest with a lot of cush actually, leather through the center section and a soft touch plastic at the top. We have a nice looking trim through there, soft touch plastic at the top of the dashboard. Through the center section, we have a leatherette with a stitching detail, and then more of that aluminum trim through the center section with padding along the console. Everything does fit together super precisely and feels very solid. Now let's fire it up with the push button start. With the vehicle all fired up, let's dig into the individual cabin details. We'll start with the gauge cluster. This is the 12.3-inch full digital gauge cluster. This is what the majority of the trim levels will have, except for the bottom two trims, which have a 7-inch screen instead, and you can reconfigure a few different elements of the design. Now, this model also has a head-up display, which is starting here on the premium sport trim level. As we move back to the steering wheel, we've got a nice-looking leather-wrapped steering wheel. We have heating now on the preferred and above, so another feature that moved down this year. I just want to point out, though, it is only heated from here to here, not on the tops and bottoms. I'm not sure if that's also the case on the highest end examples, though, since they do change some elements out for those models, including the fact that you have power tilt and telescoping on the top trims where it's manual on these trim levels. We also have rain-sensing wipers across the line. Now, let's take a look at interior storage. So even though this is a 3-row SUV, it does not have a tremendous amount of storage. That is for sure. So inside of our center console here, you're going to see some donuts inside. That's because we like to do the donut test and compare to the competition. Well, today, we're only going to have 7 donuts inside. We have competitors in this segment that can do a dozen. They can even do 2 dozen donuts, and that's certainly not the case today with this Mazda. And there's not a lot of additional storage beyond that either, so you just have your cup holders and then a small wireless phone charging pad up there in the front, but no storage, no pass-through, no passenger storage shelf, no secret hiding areas, none of that stuff on this CX-90. Now, as far as the shifter is concerned, we have an electronic style. Just go over to the left and pull back for drive. There are small paddle shifters behind the steering wheel. Then we go into reverse. Here is our backup camera. This is just the standard option. It does not have active trajectory. You can get a 360-degree camera option on upper end examples, but we still have the front and rear parking sensors. And then just go back over there to the left to go into park. You also have an electronic parking brake with an auto brake hold function. Next to those 2 buttons, you'll see a knob to control the infotainment system. You'll also see a volume knob for the audio system. So you have a standard 8-speaker system. We also have the 12-speaker Bose sound system, which starts on today's trim. Let's give it a sample. Overall sound quality of the system is pretty good. It certainly fills up the cabin nicely and has plenty of bass. All right, so now let's move into this center section. One of the things that Mazda is doing a good job with is giving you plenty of physical controls for the climate controls, which are 3-zone automatic across the lineup. You just adjust this up and down with the blue and red arrows. You also will see down below 2 critical buttons, especially on a cold day. So we have heated seats, that's on all but the base trim, and then new for 2026, the ventilated seats are also on all but the base trim. That's very impressive for the segment. As we rise above, we'll take a look at our infotainment screen. So the base model comes with a smaller 10.25 inch screen. However, everything else comes with the 12.3 inch display you're looking at right now. This display will give you access to features such as wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is what I'm in right now. And you can engage with this on the touchscreen, although some functions of the system you use the control knob down below. Now, as far as the main infotainment system itself, when I go back to that, you can see Mazda software just gives you kind of some more of the basic functions, so you'll probably want to spend most of your time inside of Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. Up top here, we have an auto dimming mirror. We also have optioned on the digital camera rear view mirror system, and you have your HomeLink remotes. And then I'll slide back the sunshade on the panoramic sunroof, which is included here on the Premium Sport and above.
Now let's check out the second row of seats in the CX-90. This, of course, is a family SUV, so you need to have a lot of practicality. Let's go ahead and dig in with some of those features. Now, first and foremost, I do want to point out the CX-90's door opens about 90 degrees. So that's pretty awesome, honestly, for loading in car seats. That makes things like that an absolute breeze. And let's talk about the second row room back here. So we're sitting at 39 inches of legroom, 39 inches of headroom. That does mean that this is going to be slightly smaller than some of the class leaders like the all-new Palisade and Telluride, but it's really a good option for the segment. It's pretty much middle of the pack when it comes to overall space. I brought along the official Car Confections ruler, so when it comes to realistic knee room, this seat is adjusted to Drew, who's 5'8", I'm 5'9". A little over 8 inches of knee room. That's certainly quite good. I love that my feet have plenty of room to move around, and these seats do have the ability to slide forward and back, forward all the way to touch the front seat, as well as recline a really good distance. So that's also another feature that's pretty good for families. Now, if we fold down the center armrest, we have 2 cup holders inside of here. You may notice that we have the bench seating on this particular model. Overall seating capacity can be either 6, 7, or 8 passengers, just depending on what trim level you select. Today we have 8 passenger seating, but be aware it does vary depending on what trim level you have. Now, in the center section, we have rear vents. We have 2 USB ports. We additionally have our own climate controls down here. And one thing I'm super happy to show you guys is the fact that you have heated back seats, and that's now standard on all but the very base model for 2026. So in addition to the ventilated front seats, you're also going to get heated back seats on that model that's barely over 40 grand. Now, let's also talk about the door trim over here on the side. We have a nicely appointed one. We have rear window sunshades, lots of soft touch plastic, the same nice materials as the front. Also, the bottom is hollowed out to give you a ton of door storage. Now let's go ahead and hop back into the third row. In order to get back here, you just grab that little lever right there that will allow the seat to kind of slide out of place. Just be aware the back does move. However, let's go ahead and get back here into the third row itself. Go ahead and throw that license plate frame up so I can actually get back here into the third row. And when it comes to the third row, the CX-90, it's going to be an okay area for this model. It's certainly not its strongest suit, that's for sure. You're sitting at about 30 inches of legroom. That is less than a lot of the biggest rivals like Grand Highlander, the new Palisade Telluride. Things like that will definitely outshine this, as well as other models like the Honda Pilot. I don't have any additional knee room, even with the seat slid all the way back. The thigh support is really the thing that I'm most disappointed in. Not a lot of thigh support back here. However, the headroom is going to be decent. And let's talk about some of the features that you'll find back here. We have 2 cup holders, a USB port on each side, and then you also have vents that kind of oddly come down out of the lower area. So overall, when it comes to the third row and how it's going to rate on the third row rating scale, I'm going to say this is fit for kids or the in-laws. And I do want to point out, of course, we have the 3 third row seats back here. However, once more, it does depend on what trim level you select, if it's going to be 3 or 2 seats back here. Let's check out the cargo area. Every CX-90 will have a standard power tailgate if you want hands-free. That starts here on the premium sport grade. And let's talk about overall cargo capacity. 15 cubic feet behind the third row of seats. If I reach up here and fold them down, they are manually folding, by the way. 40 cubic feet is what you can expect to find behind the second row of seats. And then as a maximum, 75 cubic feet. Now, that does mean that this CX-90 is going to be pretty much the smallest among its main competition when it comes to overall cargo capacity, so definitely keep that in mind when you're cross-shopping. And speaking of cross-shopping, we'd encourage you to go to carconfections.com/vehicle rankings. On our website, we've gone through all of the mid-size 3-row SUVs you could be looking at and ranked them in individual categories that matter most to buyers like this. Third row, the cargo space, technology, interior luxury, powertrain experience, as well as things like resale and reliability are all detailed for you on our website so you can see the best options in each of those categories. So if you want to make an informed buying decision, definitely check that out. It will be a useful tool for you. Now, back to the CX-90. In order to fold the second row of seats, I can't do that from the rear, so I do have to go up there and do it manually. And now that I've got those seats folded completely flat, let's go ahead and get our cargo length, width, and height figures. Overall cargo length is actually really good at 86 inches. That's because this car is very long. And as far as behind the second row of seats, about 47 inches of length. Behind the third row, we're going to measure from right there, about 21 inches of length. The opening is pretty narrow, though, 43 inches wide, and the height is going to be a little lackluster as well, about 28 inches tall. So just keep in mind, those are the more narrow figures. And then the load-in height is 31 inches. That's pretty good. Now, if I lift up the floor, there's a little bit of extra space under here, and the CX-90 does additionally have a spare tire. Well, guys, here we are behind the wheel of the 2026 Mazda CX-90. In this test drive, we'll be discussing quite a lot, as you can see on the screen right now. We'll also be getting things like our sound level reading. But first, we need to start with a hard acceleration.
All right, that was an acceleration to 60 miles an hour with the CX-90. So, what do we have under the hood? Well, we talked a little bit about it with the spec dump, but you can actually get the CX-90 with 3 different configurations. So we have the standard one today, which is actually the first time we've been behind the wheel with the standard engine. I'm happy we're able to test it out because that acceleration seemed pretty impressive from the 3.3 liter turbocharged inline 6-cylinder with a 48-volt mild hybrid system. Total power on this is 280 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque,
Yep.
I think.
Yep, so those are really quite good numbers, especially on the basic end. A lot of the competition might be doing turbocharged 4-cylinders. Definitely the torque is very high for this segment of vehicle, and I absolutely could feel that as he accelerated there. Once it kicked down there, it really pushes you back in your seat and gave you that nice refined power that I'm sure a lot of you guys are looking for in, this type of vehicle, that's for sure.
Yeah, I have to say, this engine feels very punchy when you accelerate. Again, that torque is really nice. And then the refinement, I think that's the big deal for this segment, because a lot that this competes with has switched to turbo 4-cylinders. And a lot of people aren't too happy about that because, you lack that refinement that you previously had with 6-cylinders. Well, this keeps a 6-cylinder, not just a V6, either an inline 6, which is kind of the standard that the luxury automakers use, like BMW and Mercedes.
Yeah, and speaking of those luxury brands, let's talk about the higher-end, high-output version of this. So that's going to be the same 3.3-liter turbo i6 that also has the mild hybrid system that is using premium fuel. So keep in mind, this is using regular fuel. The high output does require premium fuel. 340 horsepower on that one, 369 pound-feet of torque. So that's quite a bit more power, 60 more horsepower than this standard output version. However, I have to say, really both versions are quite good. This is, like Drew said, the first time we're in the standard output, and I really don't think it's necessary to have the high output unless you're a real power junkie. However, we've driven that plenty of times, and it's certainly nice to have. Now, Additionally, Mazda is offering a plug-in hybrid as well. That has quite a few changes for 2026, not in the powertrain setup, but when it comes to like standard features. That has a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder, 17.8 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery pack. All told, 323 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque on that.
As far as the transmission is concerned, we've got an 8-speed automatic transmission. Overall performance of this transmission is pretty good. It's nice and smooth. Seems to be a good partner with the engine.
And you also have standard all-wheel drive on the CX-90, so every model will have that. And let's talk about fuel economy. I think that's another area to be pretty impressed with this model. It's coming in at 24, 28, 25 miles per gallon combined. So that's honestly better than most of the turbocharged 4-cylinder rivals that you may be looking at because of that mild hybrid system. And it's also, I guess, a very efficient engine. The Turbo S model is rated actually at the same 25 mpg combined. And for the plug-in hybrid, the all-electric range is sitting at about 26 miles. By the way, if you want to learn more about the plug-in hybrid, we do have a dedicated review on the channel that you can check out. And of course, we need to talk about ride quality for the CX-90. That is a pretty strong element for this model. However, it is a Mazda, so I do want to just kind of preface it with that. So Mazdas typically will focus on driving dynamics more than just a cushy ride. That is the case for this model. It's not that it has terrible ride quality or anything like that. However, it's definitely going to be on the firmer side. As a matter of fact, we just drove the all-new Palisade to go film this CX-90, and the difference between the two is pretty, substantial. So if you want the most comfortable ride, you probably should look elsewhere, but this is going to be pretty good for most people's needs, that's for sure. We have the 21s on the outside, and you will feel some intrusion when you hit a big bump in the road. However, the seats are quite comfortable, and I think overall they've done a pretty good job of balancing handling and ride quality.
Yeah, definitely try it out and see if it matches your personal taste, and of course try out the handling as well, because for a lot of you guys, especially if you were cross-shopping this with a luxury option as well and you want that more dynamic performance than what is typical, this is going to be able to give you that. So, when we turn, you can just immediately feel a lot of difference from the average thing in this segment. The body is much more controlled. You have a lot less body roll, and the steering, Mazda has done a great job not making it overly heavy, but it does have some nice heft to it, and it's very responsive.
All right, and we are speeding up to 55 miles per hour so we can get our sound level reading. Let's go ahead and get it on fan speed 1. 60.9 decibels is what we were sitting at before we had to slow down here for this tow truck. Now, I don't have to sit here and guess how it compares to the competition. We can find that at carconfections.com/sound level readings. Now, compared to the competition, that is going to be on the louder end. However, we have tested out CX-90s in the past, and a lot of those were sitting in the upper 50s, about 57 decibels. That was the one last year. So not the quietest cabin here in the CX-90, but also certainly not the loudest either.
Now, we mentioned this does have a mild hybrid system. What that's primarily used for is the auto start-stop system. You can turn that on and off over here on the button next to the steering wheel. It can also cycle the engine on and off when you're cruising at high speeds.
Yeah. Now let's go ahead and get into our slam dunk and air bar favorite and least favorite element. I'll kick us off with the slam dunk and just say that overall for 2026 Mazda, adding a lot more standard features to the lower end models is a huge benefit. I think especially Drew kind of mentioned it right off the top, but the preferred trim level represents a great value. We'll talk about how much that one costs, but it's barely over 40 grand to have all of that standard features in 2026. I think is a great deal.
Yeah, for sure. And the airball will remain the same as it has the previous couple model years. Mazda just didn't package this as well as pretty much all of the competition out there. They took a very big body, but for whatever reason, you just don't have a lot of space to work with for the third row and cargo capacity.
Now we've got to talk about pricing. So last year, the CX-90 actually decreased a lot in terms of overall pricing. For 2026, they do rise about $1,000, but overall it still represents a good value for the segment. We started around 38 grand, and really the trim level I want to highlight is the Turbo Preferred, $42,950, and you get all the features that we've talked about throughout this video. So that's certainly a great deal for the segment. Now, what we have is the Premium Sport. This is also a popular configuration. This is more of a mid-trim level. So we have the 26 Premium Sport. $46,900 is our base price. We have the optional mirror, as well as just a few other handful of things. 1530 destination. We're sitting at $49,860 as tested today. You can get them for around 60 grand if you want a fully loaded example. But this certainly is a good model in the middle. We also do have a final assembly point of Japan for this product. Now, if you're looking to buy a CX-90 or any new vehicle, we'd encourage you to go to carconfections.com/newcarquotes. The reason you should do that is because we have a tool on our website that will connect you with local car dealers in your area to get you the best price. It's also going to give you access to invoice pricing information, which is a great tool to use while dealership negotiating. If you'd like to take advantage of that, as well as things like our monthly payment tool, you can find a link to that down below in our video description, as well as a pinned comment at the top of this video. But buying a vehicle is about more than just the original MSRP, so let's talk about resale and reliability. First up, let's talk about resale value. As an economics graduate myself, we took the time to develop what we think is a good estimate for the CX-90's potential resale value. We estimate that after 5 years and 60,000 miles, it'll be worth 59.44% of original MSRP, and after 10 years and 120,000 miles, 25.28%. Now, it's worth noting those are really good resale value percentages. As a matter of fact, it is in the top 5 for all vehicle brands.
Now, we've also done the same for reliability by developing the Combined Reliability Index. This takes into account several reliability studies and combines them into one that gives you the most holistic picture. In this regard, Mazda is rated above the overall industry average for all vehicle brands.
Now, if you'd like to learn more about our resale values, our reliability data, or our methodology, be sure to go to carconfections.com/resale and carconfections.com/reliability. Buying a new vehicle is a very big decision, so you want to make sure you're making a smart purchase, especially if you're cross-shopping between different vehicle brands. Now, when it comes to your warranty, you do have a 3-year 36,000-mile basic warranty and a 5-year 60,000-mile powertrain warranty. Mazda still has not added complimentary maintenance. And guys, that's it for our in-depth review of the 2026 Mazda CX-90. If you enjoyed watching this video where we highlight some of the big 2026 updates, we'd really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button down below. That's something we strive to cover on this channel to provide you all with the latest car information if you're looking to buy a new vehicle. Now, if you're already a part of our family, thank you so much for your continued support because you make this all possible. And we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.